Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tarot Today. My name is Adrien, and I'm here with.
Delphine,
Hi, Delphine. How are you today?
I think that you and I are both exhausted. Exhausted, but so glad it's Friday, right?
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, it's been a hell of a week, you know. Busy, 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 and the summer's coming to an end, and it's like, where's the year gone? Where's the year gone? Uh,
Yeah, time keeps going faster and faster, doesn't it?
Well,
Um,
you say time keeps getting faster, and it's interesting because I had this conversation with friends last week, and especially a friend of mine who's a few years younger than me, and he was saying, "Oh, I've just spent, the past 6 years in Vienna, and what am I going to do for the next 6 years? It seems like a long time." And I told him, and look, because today we're going to talk about numbers, and this is my proud moment. I said, listen, the past 6 years are not going to feel as long, the next 6 years are not going to feel as long as the past 6 years. Why? Because when you're 20 years old, 1 year is 1/20th of your life. But when you're 40 years old, 1 year is 1/40th of your life.
but
So
you're 28, Adrian.
but I'm 28, of course, of course. I'm forever 28. But, but the point is that our perception, it seems like the years are getting shorter and shorter as we get older. And so that's my understanding of fractions. And of course, my friends had laughed at me because they all know I'm very bad at math. And they said, I didn't realize you had such good understanding of fractions.
Oh my God, you're just a mathematician.
Oh my God. Look at me. I'm gonna change job. I'm gonna become a
I
mathematician.
think you should, and you'll change your name to Pythagoras. Um, but it's actually really funny because I was talking to my mentor on Wednesday, and I always like check in with her like maybe every week or every 2 weeks. And I'm just kind of like completing this really important cycle because it's like, I went to law school and I, went through all my education and my training and all this other stuff, and I qualify as a solicitor very soon. And it's been 7 years. And
Congratulations.
thank you. But when it comes to these past 7 years, my mentor was like, okay, so these past 7 years, in 7 years, every single cell renews in your body, right?
Mhm.
In 7 years, you basically entirely become a new person, right? It's like, I mean, the substance of you literally physically regenerates. Um, and she was like, yeah, so it's like the 7 years. Like, I mean, this was a chapter or a book in your life, right? Like, what was this book called? And I was like, oh, this book was called Hard. It had a mountain on the front and it was just called Hard. And it was a climb, a really, really, really hard climb. But I think seven is really interesting, right? As a number, just because like there's seven planets in classical astrology,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
There's 7 days of the week.
Hmm.
There's what else can you tell me about the number seven? Because it's like numerologically, seven is a very important number, right? It also corresponds to the chariot.
It does. It does. So, as you've guessed it, this episode is about numerology. And seven, I'm going to tell you, seven is a tricky number because some describe seven as a wonderful and spiritual number, and some describe seven as a number of troubles, right? Um, Numerology is, if we talk about numerology, there's many different systems of numerology, right? You're going to have a Kabbalistic system, you're going to have a Pythagorean system, you're going to have, if you look at both of your hands and try to understand a system by looking at your hands, you can get something different out of it. Seven is very interesting because I think seven and three are very interesting for me because when I teach tarot, so, either being the Marseille or Smith-Waite tarot, I lay down the cards in a diagram which is 3 times 7. This is the basis for to understand the message and the spiritual development that the tarot has to offer. So 7 and 3 are extremely important, right? So 7 days of the week, seven traditional planets, like you said, it's a very magical numbers, right?
Seven
And
traditional metals, too. Seven traditional metals.
here you go, seven traditional metals.
Yeah.
7 days that it took 7 days for God to create the world, right? This is what we also know. And on the seventh day, he rested. This is what is said. So seven is a very it's a very important number. I can't believe we started with seven. How do I see it? It's tricky because sometimes, depending on what's happening in the card, I can see it like a real disruption or a real emergence of the self after the harmony. Why?
And
Yeah.
that really feels like my story for the past 7 years. It's
Yeah.
like, it's like, I mean, Seven of Pentacles is all about evaluation. Seven of Wands is all about defending one's position. Seven of Cups, I suppose, is all about trying to, you know, I suppose just like, making those castles in the sky and really figuring out what is it that we want by exploring that in our mind.
Yeah.
Seven of Swords, strategy. And then the Chariot, right? Like, I mean, controlling those opposing forces and just like really trying to, get to the final destination
Mhm.
despite the noise that's going around.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's the the moving forward. I think seven. One of the first thing I like to think about is that the odd numbers are more active
Yeah,
than the odd numbers, right? So for me, seven's got really a movement forward, right? And seven is the chariot, but it's also the star, right? On a different
yeah.
level. And this idea of moving forward, even though the star doesn't look like she's moving forward, but the sense of self, the finding the self is then appearing, and this idea of emerging, right? Because I like to think that the sixes are either harmony or transition, right?
Yeah. And I like to think of the sixes as equilibrium.
Yeah, and through that equilibrium, we find the emergence of the self,
Yeah.
readjustment, moving forward. It's interesting. It's interesting when we're talking about numbers because I'm currently trying to work on a project where I use cards, playing cards from your childhood, right? Where you grew up with, what kind of games you used to play. And I was in Italy a couple of weeks ago, and Italy is as we know it now is very young, right? And we used to be lots of different provinces, and each province had their own dialect, their own card games. So you go to Italy and there's a huge amount of different regional card games. And I bought like 10 of them, right? I brought them home and I'm comparing all the different designs. And it's quite interesting to find the common things between the numbers, right? And you might have looked at these cards your whole childhood, but then all of a sudden when you start to really look at the symmetry or the lack of symmetry or the little extra little drawings in those cards, it's interesting to find the meaning you might be able to associate with specific numbers, if that makes sense. For example, in Sicilian cards, in three of the sixes, you'll find a little boat as a little extra drawing. So I think it's really interesting. I think there must be an underlying meaning in the collective unconscious for those numbers. You know what I mean?
Which one did you say the boats were on?
The sixes.
The sixes. That's interesting. Yeah, because I can think that there's boats on the Three of Wands. Um, I know that in Lenormand, I think card number three is actually the ship.
Card number three is the ship. Oh, interesting. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
But the six of sword in the Smith Waite is the boat, going
Yeah.
from rough waters to smooth waters.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting to look at numbers. We don't really, sometimes we overlook the power and simplicity of numbers. I mean, in the Marseille deck, we work a lot with, the actual, just the raw numbers, because you kind of have to, because we don't have these drawings in those cards, and two coins is literally two coins, and three coins is literally three coins. So you kind of have to work with that. So why don't we kind of go through these numbers? What do they mean for you?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Should we start at one?
Yeah, let's start with the ace. So, I mean, the ace, I mean, one, right? I mean, it's kind of just about it's about the self, it's about creation, it's about the seed. Um, how do you usually see? I mean, actually, no, the ace isn't just the beginning. Like, I mean, I suppose I should also call it like its potential, right? Like, I mean, it's
Yeah,
undifferentiated potential.
yeah.
So much like the fool, like being card number zero. It's like, I mean, it's that sense that anything is possible.
Yeah, yeah. It's exactly that. It's the seed, it's the beginning. It's, in Kabbalistically, it's Keter, it's the
Yeah,
point of
yeah, yeah.
light. It's the beginning. And it's not because you get an ace that it's success. It's the beginning of, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna how are you gonna water that seed for it to grow, for it to get to a tree, And so the one is like a cell.
Yeah, it's like the essence. It's like the essence of the energy of the suit before it's almost like before all the complication, right? I mean, not to say that the rest of the cards add complication, but like I mean, of course, like, they're going to kind of add overlay to it and we're going to begin interacting with it. But it's like, I mean, the ace as it stands is just the energy.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. The ace is kind of like once once the egg has been what's the word in English?
Fertilized?
Fertilized, right? And so this is the one. And then all of a sudden we start the division. Then we have two cells, right?
Yeah. So one becomes two. And so then we have I mean, I always see the twos as polarity, right?
Polarity. So
Duality.
in the way I work with the Marseille, the way I teach with the Marseille, we find the meaning of the numbers within the majors, right?
Right.
So the two relates to La Papesse, the High Priestess, and the Hangman. So these are extremely passive numbers, right? So it's all about accumulation of maybe information or strategy or emotions. And so there's really in the twos, it's an extremely dual number. Why? Because for me, the twos feel like they are at the same time giving us polarity, therefore agreement or disagreement, and also this non-doing of anything where we accumulate something. And so the twos can be quite interesting because yeah, for that reason, we have either the idea of polarity or the idea of accumulation, I find in the twos. No?
No, I completely agree with you. I do think that, like, because usually it's like the way that, I mean, even though I teach a Rider Waite class, it's like, I mean, the way that I also teach my students about the numerology is by relating them to the majors. And I think every single time I kind of relate the twos back to the high priestess, I find myself having a little bit of trouble or that people don't really quite understand. And that's interesting. And I still can't really quite grasp why, but I suppose it's just that like whenever we're making any kind of decision or whenever we're kind of like sitting in that place of receptivity, it makes more sense to kind of just go within and check in with oneself, right? And see what our intuition is actually saying about the direction that we're actually meant to move in. And the funny thing is that that's quite a simple concept, but I think a lot of people actually struggle with it. Like,
Yeah.
what do you find?
Well, actually, what you just said, it's interesting. When you go in and you think and you meditate, you, when you really think and meditate, you consider both
Yeah,
aspects of a question or of a matter, right? What if I
yeah,
do this and what if I do that? And if we
yeah,
think about the high priestess, she sits in between the two pillars, right? And so
yeah,
she is herself the pillar of equilibrium because she sits
yeah,
between the pillar of mercy and severity. So I think with the twos, there's really this consideration of a duality. And by considering the duality, we accumulate knowledge or strategy or feeling or whatever this might be. We
yeah,
become more knowledgeable in a sense. So it really, so the activity is it's an inner activity. It seems, it looks passive to the outer eye, but the activity is inside ourselves, right?
yeah,
So I think this is what the two is describing for me, and it really works with the high priestess and the hangman because the hangman is
yeah, 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 yeah.
all he can
Yeah.
do is bloody think, like nothing
I,
else.
co- I no, no, I completely agree with you. But it's just funny, right? Because it's like, I mean, most people, well, not most people, maybe I shouldn't say that, but it's like there are quite a few people in this world that don't. that still don't understand what that inner consideration is actually like. I mean, perhaps they just haven't been critical about that process that's occurring within them, um, or they've just never actually sat with themselves. I have one friend who um, is a recovering alcoholic, and basically, it's like, she was just talking about the concept of sitting with herself, and she was like, "Yeah, like, I mean, for my entire life, I didn't know what that meant until I actually had to do it, and wow, was it actually just so difficult." But yeah, anyway, I digress. But
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting this idea of sitting with oneself in the twos is
yeah,
the twos is um because this is what's interesting with twos because Etela talks about the two of swords as friendship.
mm,
you know and it makes sense because if the swords are ideas or mind, the two ideas coming together, friends, bringing these two things together you know
yeah,
so this is another another way to look at it. And I'm currently trying to work as well with a French tarot, which is a playing tarot, right? So I'm working a lot with playing cards at the moment. And it's trying to figure out a numerology, a system of numerology which makes which makes sense all the way through, right? And it's quite tricky. It really is tricky. Um, but yeah, sitting with yourself, considering, I like that. But then once you've done this, you can step into
we,
the three. You can
yeah, we go
create,
to the three.
you know. And these numbers I find really have duality because
Yep,
you create with three, but then with
yep,
13 you destroy.
very sexy. Very, very sexy.
So if you guys were wondering how to excite my friend Delphine here on a Friday morning, talk to her about destruction.
Well, could you please tell us how one says orgasm in French?
An orgasm.
No, 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 not in
Ah,
English, Adrian, in French, please.
that is the French word, an orgasm.
Oh, I thought it was le petit mort,
Oh, you can also say la petite mort. Yeah, of course.
which is a little death.
A little death. Why are we speaking about sex? Again.
Um, I
We
think we're
haven't
just
even
trying.
had a martini. We didn't even have
We,
a martini yet. I mean, come on.
we're just trying to get viewers. No, I'm joking. Sex sells. Um, but point actually, yeah, that is interesting, isn't it? That is interesting. Um, three is a sexy number. It introduces the other, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's sexy because the one and two come together and create a third, right? So I think there is
I like that we're talking about like cell division and reproduction and fertilization and orgasm and yeah, but like I mean, but I suppose that's just it, right? We're talking about life. Anyway, I'm getting really philosophical, but point is that threes are also just a very creative number.
uh-huh.
Threes are also just a very creative number. And so when we say that with the three, something else kind of comes into the mix, how would you explain that? It's
This,
like we have a third thing that kind of comes in, right?
for
Um,
me, it's not that it comes in, it's that it comes out. It comes out of the reflection. It comes out of the blood closet. We're in a silly mood. So that third, that number three is something that's being born out of the two, right? So there is the either the union or the thinking of two different ideas, and then we can move into we have this realization or we have this movement forward, right? And the Three of Swords is quite interesting, I think, in the Smith weight because the three pierce the heart. And of course, we talk about heartbreak and breakups and so on. But the way I really see it is that the mind gets to the heart of the matter.
yeah, division proliferates into pain.
What?
Di- It's- division proliferates into pain. It's kind of just like with the way that I always see the Three of Swords is just kind of like, I mean, it's it's like I always relate it back to the original triangle of father, mother, child,
Yeah.
right? And so it's almost just like, it's like, I mean, that's kind of our first template of interaction that
Hmm.
we have.
Yeah.
And like in that initial triangle, that it kind of like produces just the initial template of how do I explain this? It produces like the initial template of potential pain or potential trauma, or even just like new ideas that kind of cause our mind to
Yeah.
expand. And even when we think about overthinking, or if we think about heartbreak, or even if we think about sorrow, a lot of times like these are actually processes that take place in the mind. And
Mhm.
so, it's like it's that expansion, that expansiveness. And yes, that can create pain, but it also kind of takes us outward. And once we sort of go outward, we can then like break it all apart and then process it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. The three is the first shape that we can create because one is a point, two creates a line, three creates a triangle, right? So this is what you're talking about. You can create
Yeah.
first. So we have the father, mother, child. So we really have a shape, a family. We have the something can happen there. And if we talk about the triangle, the we also have this tradition where actually we bring what's the word I'm looking for?
Apparition.
Apparition of the spirits within the triangle, right? The triangle of spirit. So the number three really brings about this idea of the first shape, the first form.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does
Yeah.
what does four bring you?
To me, I see fours as consolidation, stability.
Yeah.
Yeah, fours are just, I mean, I always see them to mean the home. It's funny because like, for me, when it comes to like the numerology of kind of the cards, it's like I just see them as feelings and I find it very hard to describe the energy of these numbers. Um, but it's like, but ultimately four, it's about structure, it's about boundaries. It relates back to the emperor, right? Like rules, regulation, like it's just, giving something the structure that it needs to thrive.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something calm about it in the four. There's always something very
Yeah.
calm about it.
Four walls, four directions, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
four elements as well. And
Ten.
I guess what shape can we create now? A square.
A square. Yeah, absolutely. It's a square. How square are you?
Varies.
Yeah. No, this is the four. It's very. I don't have so much to say about it because it's very. It's a square number. It's a settling number. And I was reading the other day that the four of hearts in playing cards represents also sex because it is seen as the four poles of a bed in traditional cartomancy. Yeah, I was like, okay, I get that. I can see that.
It's so interesting, right? Like, I mean, the four is
I've lost you.
it's like if we think about it, if we think about emotion, we think about emotion that's become contained. We can get depression or we can get apathy because emotion wants expression or it wants movement. And so if you give emotion structure or architecture, maybe sometimes it's not always a great thing.
Yeah.
But then it's interesting because like the four of cups in with Thoth tarot is the card of luxury.
Hmm.
And so that's also really quite interesting. And so yeah, it's like I mean, and how do you see the four of cups in Marseille?
Well, the way I see the Four of Cups is that sometimes if the water doesn't flow and it's too stagnant, it starts to rot. So
Oh.
there is a sense of feeling settled emotionally. So we can have this idea, oh, we feel good. The Four of Cups is kind of like you're with your partner, you watch TV, you have dinner, it's kind of nice, it's settled. But then if you're too settled like this and there's no passion and wild sex, then eventually that water in the four cups will rot and you don't want that, right? So I think the four for me are always okay, there's a stability, but do we keep asking question about this stability, right? Because if that stability becomes too rigid, it becomes like the emperor being a tyrant. you know. So there is a need for stability within the four, but then at some point, the five appears, and that's the need to go further. It's the risk taking for me, the five, you know. We
Yeah. Rupture.
Rupture. Yeah, rupture for better or worse. You know, it could go either way. You know, fives don't have a good name in the Smith weight. But in the Marseille, we have this idea that you go beyond because the five, so we have the four elements, and the fifth one is the spirit, right? And so it's this access to a higher, we're pushing further from the material, from the square aspect, right? So,
Yeah.
and the Pope is the five. The Pope is, or the Hierophant is the bridge between this, the material and spiritual, right?
Yeah.
The pentagram has 5 points, right? So the fifth point is what's taking us further, right? This is the number
Yeah.
five. But there's a risk because the other aspect of number five is 15, the devil. You know, so the four gives you this idea of being in a comfortable place and you're taking a risk with the five, but where is that going to take you? You know?
Where? Yeah.
Where?
I wonder.
Yeah, I want
Into the six.
into the six. Yeah. The six or the sex. Oh my God. Stop this morning.
I started taking a new supplement and it's called maca. And it helps with
What does it help with, Delphine?
it helps with virility. But
With
like it also
reality?
I think it's virility. I don't know if women have virility. I think that's actually only a term used for men, but that's fine. But it also it's just like it's really energizing. It's supposed to be really good for hormonal balance as well. But speaking of balance, I mean that relates right back to six, right? So harmony. So basically, after sort of the rupture, the sort of like the destabilization of the six, there's this idea of I mean, equilibrium, as we already said, we kind of already talked about sixes. Harmony, I always think of it as like a symbiotic relationship. I feel
Mhm.
like whenever we're in the six, it's like we're kind of in relationship to someone or something. And so, yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, for me, the six is the really this idea of transition or mirror. Because
Mirror, I
usually
like that.
very, yeah, usually the cards, the sixes are always very, the sixes and the eights, not always the eights in the Marseille, but the sixes are very um, mirrored. They're very parallel. You know, the Six of Cups is two rows of three cups, you know. It's very, so I think it's being aware because, it relates to the lover. So there's the awareness of the other, the choice, we mirror something, right?
Yeah,
And what I do often as a coach is that all I have to do is hold the mirror for people to understand what they're trying to work through, right? And so I think the sixes allow this aspect of mirror and therefore transition, moving on to something else, to find the harmony to move somewhere else, right? I think if you're in a position of five, which you're taking a risk, there's a lack of taking a risk to go beyond. You don't have the harmony, and there is a bit of a um, there's disruption in the five. Therefore, in the six, you have to find the balance within the disruption of the five, if that makes sense. Does that
yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah, totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. And
Mm.
then we're on to seven, which we started with, which is funny because like seven is obviously a very powerful number. It's a very creative number.
Hmm.
Um, and it's also I mean, arguably seven might be one of the most esoteric numbers. I mean, there's so many esoteric numbers. I mean, threes are really important. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because there's even this manifestation technique, and it's called 369. And so basically, with the 369 method, you write down your wish three times in the morning, six times in the afternoon, and nine times in the evening.
Hmm.
Um, and like, so like whenever I was like, just trying to get a new job, or like, or sometimes just if I'm really trying to kind of like instill a certain thought within myself, like, whether that's like, oh, I'm successful, or, I am this or I am that. It's like I'll just write it down over and over again. And I do think that there's something very, very important. I think even Nikola Tesla was obsessed with 369 specifically. Don't ask me why. I wish I could actually go into it, but that's also just like another note that we should kind of, um, yeah,
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to
keep.
look this up.
Yeah,
Tesla
363 369.
lines.
And it was really interesting because I was manifesting something once. And I was doing 369 369, and you're supposed to do it for like 90 days. And so I had started in winter because, of course, like, I mean, we work with the seasons, we work with the SBATs. But point is that, yeah, I did it for an entire season. And it was interesting because then on spring equinox, I went to a show and I was going through coat check. And obviously, I got a number back. And it was so interesting because the number that I got back was 369. And then I actually did get what I had been manifesting. And it was just so interesting.
Oh, beautiful. Wow.
Yeah, I glued the little ticket in my journal.
Nice. Nice. Well, that's a success story.
Yeah.
6 9. So what do you make of the eight?
Eight is the number of strength. Eight is the number of strength, right? I mean, at least with, I mean, I know that it's a little bit different than Marseille, but eight is the number of strength. And basically eight to me just always, I mean, it's also the number of like infinity, right? It's like an infinity symbol if you turn it sideways. Um, so there's just like this idea of, I mean, I don't really know how to say it any better than that. It's just inner strength when it shows up, right?
Yeah. It's interesting because for me, eight reads very different. It's the cycle, the repeating cycle, and the it's a double square. Things are really settled. It's the justice, in the Marseille. So you have something really strong, something solid, something official. The Eight of Cups looks a little bit like a wedding party for me in the Marseille. But in the Smith way, the Eight of Cups is walking away from something that seems good, having the inner strength to do that. So I think it always depends how cards can be aspected. And this is why I'm trying to figure out a numerology system which really could be universal, you know. Uh, I guess in the eight, if you think about something that's really settled, something that's officialized, and then on the other hand, you have this idea of having the inner strength to walk away from something that's extremely settled. I think that's probably the other side of it, and understand that everything is a cycle because the eight also relates to the moon, 18, which gives us a very cyclic energy,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
which takes us to the nine.
Yeah, I always see the nines as such individual cards, and people don't always understand like what I mean when I say that, because in the Rider-Waite Smith, of course, it's like, nine relates to the hermit, but also like the nine of cups. When I think about wish fulfillment, obviously, when a wish is fulfilled, it's like that's an experience that we have on
Mhm.
our own, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, other people, like I got a new job, obviously that's my wish fulfilled, but it's like, and although you're happy for me, it's not your wish fulfilled, right? And it's like with the nine of swords, it's like, this idea of anxiety. I mean, anxiety is something that like, we feel within ourselves. And yeah, maybe perhaps there's like collective anxiety that we can feel when certain world events happen or something like that. But at the end of the day, anxiety is like, it's a personal experience.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Um,
Absolutely.
and even with the nine of pentacles in the Smith Waite, it's like, we have a woman standing in a garden being able to luxuriate in the success that she's created for herself, perhaps, at the perhaps, after needing to give up some of her independence, you know for that comfort. But even then, it's like, it's an individual card. And same thing with the nine of wands. It's like, the hyper vigilance, like, kind of being the last one standing, like, being a little bit at the end of your rope, but, again, still soldiering on.
Yeah.
um all very, it's a very individual energy. How do you see the nine? You see three triangles, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, I think so. What you've just described is exactly what I try to teach as well when I do the Smith weight, because the nine is individual and the 10 is for the others, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's the end of the road, something that you've accumulated for yourself in the nine, but when you take it onto the 10, it's your legacy for others, right? And you can see that throughout in the four suits. Um, the nine of cups, the nine of hearts traditionally is the wish card, so you get your wish. It's kind of the end of the road, nine, right? 10 is actually the transition to something else, to a higher level. So nine is there is a sense of finish line, there's a sense of, fulfillment. But yeah, it's three triangles as well. And what's interesting with the number nine is that it can be represented in so many different ways, numerologically. It can be 6 plus 3, it can be 3 times 3, it can be 5 plus 4. So playing with all these combinations,
Math.
but if you think about it, what is 5 plus 4, right? It's,
Nine, nine.
it's yeah, but it is the risk that has been taken out of the stability you've created. You see what I mean?
No, I do, I do.
Yeah, so when you play with that, it gives you lots of different meanings that you can use and you can work with. Everything is falling into place. And when you step into the 10, you're ready to share this with others. So, Camelia Elias says, one is a little, 10 is a lot. So there is really this idea of growing amount of whatever it is, and, if there's too many swords, then, maybe that's not so welcome. But, if there's 9 coins, well, yeah, bring them on, I'm not gonna turn them down. So, sometimes numbers can be very complicated and very esoteric, but they also can be very simple. I'd rather have 9 coins in my pocket than two.
Yeah, same. It's like it's like the 10. And
It's
then
like,
we're
yeah,
and then with the 10, we are at it's saturation, right?
absolutely. I always say that
Saturation.
with saturation, I think there is a saturation. The 10 is a saturation. I see it in the 10 of cups in the Marseille because we have that extra cup being knocked over, right?
Yeah.
there's too much of it, and we're at the end. It's time to move on to get to something else, right?
Yeah, like the cycle can't expand further unless we go back to the one.
Exactly.
And I love it because it also corresponds, tens, of course, correspond to the Wheel of Fortune. And, I just love this whole idea that with the Wheel of Fortune, it's like, it's all about fate, it's all about destiny, it's all about cycles. And, basically, whenever the Wheel of Fortune actually appears, it's like we're being reoriented on the direction that we're meant to go in order to actually reach that completion with the world,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It's,
And in the Marseille deck, in that big cup that we have at the top, often we can see a little coin inside of it, telling you that
mm,
the 10 of cups is there, and then it's going to become the ace of coins, right? So this idea of cycle, that the 10 is actually the pivot moment, right? It's not the new
yeah,
cycle yet because it's 1 and 0. It's that pivot moment. It's that moment of change. It's that moment of, letting go, accepting, going further, type of thing. This is the 10. This is the 10. I really, yeah. This is how I see it. It's the legacy you live for others. I often think that if I won the lottery, or when I win the lottery, I want to create, people are like, oh, what are you gonna do? If you win the lottery, you're gonna do this, that. I said, actually, I want to buy a house for myself, my family, and my friends, and I want to create a school of mysteries. You know,
oh
this
my God. And
this
let's
is
create a
my
commune as well. A commune. We'll mix it.
a
Okay,
huge
that's my dream, not yours. Whatever. Okay.
yeah. No, but I'd
I'll,
love to
I'll
like
be at the School of Mysteries too.
to create a huge school of mysteries, buy a huge building somewhere, invite the people that can really teach and to give the opportunity to people to actually learn all these wonderful things and to have this legacy, to be able to pass this on. So if anybody wants to invest in my School of Mysteries, you can always drop me a little message. But it's like if I won 20 million euros or something like this, like I would, put probably half
If
of it into investing a School of Mysteries. And this would be my legacy. This would be my Ten of Pentacles.
I would do the same thing. I'm gonna copy you, except I would also put like, I don't know, 5 million into maybe an investment fund to help save the environment.
Yeah,
Because
like if you have 50 million, you can do all of these things. Like
yeah, and then also I'd hire a special person to come into my home and like basically like I would just want plants everywhere, right? Like just hanging plants. But then I'd be really concerned because I'd also have like 10 cats, and so I'd need to make sure that the plants weren't toxic to the cats. And so
But darling, you know,
anyway.
50 million, will you move into a castle like Enya? You know?
Oh my God, yeah, let's do that. Maybe I'll take singing lessons and we'll actually just start a band as well. But anyway, I'm dreaming big here. I'm back to the Seven of Cups.
Ten of Cups and Ten of Pentacles. And so I think, dreaming big, think about these numbers as being also possibly your ladder for manifestation. You can meditate on those numbers. How much of something do I want, or how little do I want something in my life? What if you have too many worries and you want to diminish the amount of swords that are in your life? Can you transform the swords? Can you transform these cups, these hearts? What sort of numbers do you want to access in your life? I think these
Yeah,
are.
well, and I think that's a beautiful thing to leave people with. And it's interesting because over the spring equinox, I did a little meditation on the Empress, and of course, the Empress has um, the 12 stars in her
Mhm.
crown to represent the 12 signs of the zodiac. And what I did was I took 12 little stars of rose quartz and I put them in my altar. But that's interesting as well, right? Because 12, you have one and you have two. 1 plus 2 equals 3.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, I know that Adrian talked a little bit about the addition. I don't really know if we can do subtraction with numerology, can we? I don't know. But
Subtraction. I think you can. I think you have to be careful why you do them. I think you can do the subtraction, but you have to watch
subtraction.
division and multiplication. No, I think it depends on what you want to manifest, right? If you want to reduce something in your life, then use a subtraction. But if you want to add something in your life, just add it up.
um, love it.
You
I'm
know.
gonna go do some addition.
Let's go to some addition. All right. Well, I hope this episode of numerology was helpful, and it was certainly a lot of fun for me. And I'm going to start multiplying my tens and my tens of coins, and start to look into my School of Mysteries. And
Yeah, we'll try to figure out how to add the numbers so that we can find the winning lottery numbers so that we can play Euro Millions and open up the mystery school.
there
So
you go. We're going to do that.
that's our next episode. See you there.
All right, everyone. Have a gorgeous week and see you next week for a new episode of Tarot Today. Bye, Delphine.
Bye.